Hello, my name's Richard Felix and I'm going to take you on a tour of haunted Nottinghamshire. And what better place to start than here in front of ye old trip to Jerusalem. This goes back to AD 1189 and is reputedly the oldest pub in England. And of course, a pub of that age has to be haunted. And one of the many stories to do with the trip is that inside upstairs is a model of a galleon. It's in a glass case and it's absolutely filthy. The reason it's so dirty is because over 70 years ago, the last 3 people that tried to clean it died under mysterious circumstances. And no one since that day has dared to touch it, hence the fact that it's in a glass case. I'm going to take you to some haunted sites. I'm going to take you to some sites where I believe, although people have said there's a ghost there, that it's no more exciting than a recording. It's to do with tragic, traumatic, premature death, murders, suicides, battles and executions. And I believe that the energy used in resisting death can be so immense that that event just before death can be recorded either into the fabric of a building, the woodwork, the plaster, or possibly into the soil. I don't think they're ghosts. I think they're just purely and simply a recording. It's no more exciting than pressing the replay button of your video recorder. So settle back, turn down the lights, give me your full attention, and let me take you on a tour of haunted Nottinghamshire. And I'm now taking a long, slow walk up Mansfield Road to Gallows Hill at the top. This is the route that all the condemned people would take that were about to be hanged. They'd be taken in a cart or a wagon from the county jail at the bottom all the way up to the top of Gallows Hill. On the way up, the cart or the wagon would stop at various pubs, inns and hostelries on the way up there. The landlord would send out a complimentary pint or a glass of wine. So by the time the condemned got to the gallows, they were probably so drunk that it probably didn't bother them too much that they were about to be hanged. The last pub on the way up was the Nag's Head, this pub across the road from me. And after that pub, there was no more beer. They were on the wagon. They then got to the top of the gallows here, stood on the cart or the wagon, a few prayers, a couple of hymns, long ones if they knew them. Then when the crowd got a little bit fed up, someone would smack the backside of the horse and the horse would draw away. And they would be left dangling in the breeze, choking, coughing, writhing for anything up to a quarter of an hour until they died of slow asphyxiation. One interesting story of a man that was sentenced to be hanged here at Nottingham. He declined the last drink on the way up and got back onto the wagon, up to the gallows at the top of the hill. He was hanged. 10 minutes after his execution, a reprieve came in. Had he have had his last drink here at the Nag's Head, that man would have lived. And they say that even to this day, that they see a ghostly figure, for want of a better word, hanging around the Nag's Head. I'm here at Bestwood Lodge, surrounded by fields, hills, woods, and yet This place is only 4 miles from the centre of Nottingham. For over 900 years, Bestwood Lodge has been here in some form. It was part of the Royal Park of Sherwood, and kings and queens have hunted here for hundreds of years. It was here in 1585 that King Richard III received the news that Henry Tudor, later to become Henry VII, was heading towards Bosworth Field. It's a very, very haunted place. And on many occasions, Jenny Bright, who runs the famous Nottingham Ghost Walk, has hosted haunted Nottinghamshire weekends here at Bestwood Lodge. And this is the place that I heard a ghost in 1977. So let's go inside and have a look. And we're now approaching probably the most haunted bedroom here at Bestwood Lodge. With me, Simon Forbes, the deputy manager.
That's right.
The key's already in it. And in we go. Let's go and have a look. Now, I must be honest, Simon, it doesn't look to be the most haunted.
It doesn't, not at all. Average, ordinary room.
Yeah, and yet this is where as many things happen.
That's
yeah?
right, yeah, so we've definitely.
And what? Who?
Just we have lots of residents that come in and they get a feeling about the room, they decide they just don't like to stay in it for some reason, and they check out either very quickly or they stay a little while and then they just can't get used to it, so we either have to move them or they just check out, unfortunately.
But they actually come down to you at reception?
They do, yeah, come down to reception and say, basically, there's the key, there's something about that room, got a very funny feeling about it, and we have to either move them or they just don't like the hotel and they move on somewhere else.
Amazing. And has anybody seen anything in here? Or?
Apparently, yes, yeah, quite a few people have actually. Sometimes if they don't like the room, they will come downstairs, ask to be moved. Sometimes they'll stay and then they come down just before they check out. They will say that they had a particularly bad night's sleep, or they just felt something about the room and they'll tell us the next morning.
Really?
After a night in the room, definitely.
Some people actually stay a second night?
Sometimes, yes, some people aren't too bothered, and although they might think they saw something, they think it's quite unusual and quite a novelty really, so they stay up all night and try and see something else, I think.
That's amazing. So, in other words, if you want a haunted bedroom in a haunted hotel, it's room 30.
It's room 30.
Bestwood Lodge, Nottinghamshire.
That's right, this is definitely the one.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm actually now in the ballroom of Bestwood Lodge. There's actually a conference taking place in here, but they've very kindly allowed me to come in here. There's a very good reason that I'm here. 25 years ago, I was here at Bestwood Lodge in the Territorial Army. I was an officer cadet. I was the radio operator, and we'd been attacked on an exercise called Exercise Inside Right. We were billeted here in this room at Bestwood Lodge. We'd been in a battle, and I was high, I think is the only word. We came through this door from the kitchen, and I was the last person back in with my officer, a chap called David Freeman. He went down to the bottom of the room and I climbed into my sleeping bag, here, up against the wall. There was a soldier on the right of me, soldier on the left of me, and soldiers all the way around the room. Everyone else was asleep. I settled down into my sleeping bag, and all of a sudden, there was a noise here in the kitchen. I thought we were going to be attacked again. I went to get my rifle. Nothing happened. I settled back, and then at the back of me, here, in the wall, this door wasn't here then. The sound of a lad's voice started, a young chap of about 17 or 18, crying, calling for a nurse, moaning. In fact, the hair on the back of my neck's starting to stand up again now, because I've not been in here since. He was calling for a nurse, and the only thing I couldn't do, of course, was to press a buzzer to get a nurse, because I wasn't in a hospital, I was in this room. The noise continued, and tears started trickling down my cheeks while I was listening to this young lad dying. And as most people do, eventually, I went to sleep. A little later, at the end of the exercise, I was driving down to a place called Sennybridge in Wales, driving a minibus. There was a Women's Royal Army Corps lady on the minibus and a chap from Malta. We were talking about where we'd been. And I said, oh, we had a battle at Bestwood Lodge. And she said to me, oh, that place is haunted. There's been an article in the Nottingham Evening Post all about it. And before we went any farther, I said, wait, before you say any more, it was a hospital during the war, wasn't it? Yes, she said, that's in the article. It was requisitioned by the army and was used as a hospital during the Second World War. And what I believe I heard here was actually a recording of a young soldier dying of his wounds. But unfortunately, on this bright March morning, I can't hear him. And we're outside Bestwood Lodge in the car park, and I just happened to have bumped into Des, who is hotel security,
yeah.
maintenance, and you've seen a ghost.
I have.
Here.
Yeah, I have.
Where?
I saw him in a restaurant one morning, about 10:30. I walked in the restaurant just to check the bulbs in the chandeliers, and he was sitting at a table. And it was only a split second sort of thing, so it was a quick look. Looked away at the chandelier, looked again, and he'd gone.
So it wasn't a customer having a late breakfast?
No,
or
it wasn't. And it was the same apparition that most people report seeing. It's a tall gentleman. He was wearing a long grey greatcoat, and he got a Cromwellian style haircut. That's all I can...
So it wasn't a modern chap, of course?
Oh, no.
Crumbs.
And of course our housekeeper, she saw what she thought was a head on top of one of the water tanks in the water tower.
Yeah.
And I thought she'd seen a pigeon, but she wouldn't have it. So I went up and had a good look round, but I couldn't see anything. But it is a naughty place.
Really?
Yeah, it's a bit spooky up there.
I can imagine, yeah, yeah. So of course that plays with your imagination, of course, but I mean...
it can do, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the apparition I saw was well before she reported seeing the head.
Right.
So,
and have other people seen things here as well?
Oh yeah, we've had one or two customers have reported seeing people in rooms and whatever, or things happening. I mean, one of the cleaners, one of the chambermaids said to me one morning, she'd seen me walk into their staff room.
Right.
And I said, no, because I've been downstairs. Well, I saw you about 5 minutes ago. I said, I've only just come upstairs, go and ask your mother, because her mother's the housekeeper.
Right.
And she says, no, he's just come upstairs from down in the cellar. So you haven't seen him up here, and it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
So she'd seen something.
Yeah, exactly. So it really is a haunted hotel.
I think so, yeah. I really do. I mean, I'd got an open mind when I started work here.
Yeah.
But like I say, one or two things that have happened to me, and I can't explain them. So I now believe in ghosts.
That's what it's all about. Des, thanks very much indeed.
Okay.
Here in Nottinghamshire, just as over the border in Lincolnshire, there are many wartime airfields still preserved. I'm at RAF Shipston. You can still see the old watchtower, and to the left of it, the haunted hangar. People have said during the war and afterwards that there's an unearthly presence in the building, especially when people are working alone late at night. One night, not many years ago, the place was completely locked up, but the lights continued to go on and off all through the night. And the police dogs would never venture near the hangar after dark. I'm still on the Fosse Way. I'm outside the derelict airfield, RAF Newton. I've just seen a sign. It says, "This is a prohibited place within the meaning of the Official Secrets Act. Unauthorised persons may be arrested and prosecuted." So I'm not going in here. So many young men during the Second World War that died in either training crashes or returning from raids on airfields, some of them only 18 or 19. Probably the reason why so many of them still haunt these airfields, because they're still lingering, because obviously they didn't have a full life. There's the ghost of an airman seen around this area here at Newton. He's seen around the houses near to where the runway was. It was only a grass strip here, and they only had Wellington bombers here, no heavies. But he's been seen frequently walking along the road, along the Fosse Way, and on frequent occasions people driving along this road to Skegness, Mablethorpe, have pulled up to give the airman a lift, and as they get close to him, he just disappears from view. And here, in the middle of Arnold in Nottinghamshire, Furlong Street, there is a terraced house along here that has been the subject of a considerable amount of poltergeist activity. Many occupants have reported strange things happening, furniture moving, glasses blowing up, and one previous occupant said that it was so bad that on many occasions the family actually moved out of the house and slept in their car at nights. It became unbearable and they eventually moved away. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to stand anywhere near that house. A, because I'm frightened to, and B, because it would not give the right impression for anyone that was living there today. There is a story that a suicide actually took place in the attic of that terraced house, which has caused all that activity, which they tell me still happens to this day. And here I am entering one of the tunnels at Newstead Abbey, home of the world famous Lord Byron. Lots and lots of ghost stories to do with this place, and I've just seen down there a sign pointing towards the maze and a tomb, and it says on it Bosun's Tomb. I'm just off to find it now. I'm in the maze. Behind me, magnificent Newstead Abbey. Stories of monks, white hazers, ghosts of ladies, but more of those in a minute, because I've just spotted what I believe to be the tomb of Lord Byron's famous dog, Bosun. It's just over this hedge. I've never been here before, so I'm not really sure whether that's it, but it certainly looked like a memorial or a tomb to me. It is, and it states, "Near this spot are deposited the remains of one who possessed beauty without vanity, strength without insolence, courage without ferocity, and all the virtues of man without his vices. This praise, which would be unmeaning flattery if inscribed over human ashes, is but a tribute to the memory of Bosun, a dog who was born in Newfoundland, May 1803, and died at Newstead, November the 18th, 1808. That was penned by Lord Byron himself, who stated that when he died, he would like to be buried near Bosun, but he was denied that. There have been many accounts of people seeing a very large dog wandering around this area and then disappearing. But probably the most famous story is that of a monk that's been seen on frequent occasions in the crypt at Newstead. On one occasion, a workman walked down into the crypt and saw a figure of what he believed to be a monk or a canon dressed in black. Now, most people that see monks, abbots, canons, see them in either grey or brown habits, but this man stated it was distinctly wearing black. And of course the canons that were here at Newstead were Augustinians. They were known as the Black Canons, so he got that bit right. He saw it in one of the corridors. It was hovering along the floor. It was legless. It had no face, and as it got towards him, the man froze. He couldn't go forwards, he couldn't go back as he watched it hovering ever closer towards him. Just before it got to him, it veered off and disappeared through the wall. The man ran, said he never even touched the steps, but he would never, ever go down into the crypt alone again. On July the 7th, 1817, a young girl called Bessie Shepherd was walking along this road, the A60 Mansfield Road. She was coming from Papelwick to find a job in Mansfield. She was being followed by a chap from Sheffield called Charles Rotherham. He thought she got money on her, and on this very spot here, he battered her to death with a hedge post. He left the hedge post by her body and ran off. He was soon caught because he sold her few belongings, her shoes and her umbrella, at the Three Crowns in Red Hill. He was taken to Nottingham, tried, sentenced and hanged for murder on July the 28th, 1817. So that the girl was not forgotten, members of the public from Mansfield had a public subscription, and they erected this stone to her memory. And it says, "This stone is erected to the memory of Elizabeth Shepherd of Papelwick, who was murdered when passing this spot by Charles Rotherham, July the 7th, 1817, aged 17 years. Soon after the murder took place, there were reports on this road from coachmen and people on horses and people walking that near this spot that they could see the ghost of Bessie Shepherd hovering around this area. Those stories stopped until the stone was moved, and legend has it that every time this stone is moved, usually for road widening, soon after the stone is moved, the ghost of Bessie is seen again. But the last reported sighting was in 1956, when a car veered off the road near this spot and hit the stone and moved it. And within days of that happening, again there were sightings, and a young couple driving back to Mansfield from Nottingham, driving along this road one dark evening, looked to the right hand side and saw a white figure dressed in a long flowing dress hovering above this very stone. That was in 1956, and no one has reported seeing the ghost of Bessie Shepherd ever again. This is Kirkby in Ashfield. Behind me, the old church of St Wilfrid's, and I'm standing by one of the oldest pubs in Kirkby, aptly named the Duke of Wellington. This pub, over the years, has had a great deal of poltergeist activity. There is also a report of a tunnel from here to the church. But these places are much more interesting on the inside, so let's go in and have a look. Right, now I'm inside the Duke of Wellington with Vic the landlord. Now, you're the new landlord, aren't you?
Yeah, we moved in a week ago.
And anything?
On the Thursday night, we were serving 8, 9 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden, on 2 of the beers, we couldn't get beer through. I went down the cellar and I found out that the gas had been switched off down the cellar.
Physically?
Physically switched off.
Not by you?
Not by me, no.
Really? And how long have you been here?
We're only 1 week, that's all.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether you know, but there's a lot of reported poltergeist activity in the pub, going back many, many years, on frequent occasions, apparently in this area, because this is the old bit. The ex-landlords have come down from the night before, and all the furniture is piled up in the middle of the floor, tables upturned, but nobody heard anything happen in the night.
I've heard stories. Since we've been in here the short time, we've heard lots of stories, but that's something that happened, I don't know.
No, but I mean, it's only, 2 or 3 nights since you moved in, so you've more to come, I promise you.
That's good.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Okay.
This is Carlton in Lindrick Church near Worksop. This church has been here for over 1,000 years, but this stone here in front of the church has been around for over 2,000 years, and there have been mysteries and stories connected with this stone for that period. It's called the Devil's Stone. It's believed at some time that pagan sacrifices were carried out with the blood of a virgin maiden, and her blood was dripped into the stone. This was then used as a pagan altar. Ever since then there have been stories of a ghostly white figure of a girl floating above the stone. For many, many years the stone was taken inside the church, and then all of a sudden one day, no one knows how, it appeared outside on the grass. The villagers were a bit concerned about this toing and froing of the stone, and so they buried it in the graveyard. But one day, a vicar who was rather inquisitive gathered a group of schoolboys, and they dug it up and placed it here in front of the tower of this 1,000-year-old church. Many, many sightings have been seen of some form of ghost or spirit here. Some think it's the devil. No one really knows, but all we know is that on many occasions, whatever's happened here, the devil has certainly had his hand in it. I'm in the little village of Scoby, North Nottinghamshire, the home of William Brewster, one of the Pilgrim Fathers. But I'm not here for him. I'm looking for a very special gravestone here in the churchyard. In 1952, a young chap returning from Bawtry back to Retford was trying to get a lift. He got so far and was dropped off at Hawk's Nest, just down the road, and he walked here into Scoby. As he turned the corner, he noticed a cottage that he'd never seen before, a little white cottage with windows pointing up the road and down the road. There was a little light glimmering in the window. He was walking by and he noticed that there was a figure inside, and he couldn't understand why he'd never seen the place before. As he was just getting by, he heard a scream of a woman coming from inside the cottage, and he stopped, turned round and looked back, and he saw a figure run out of the door, clutching its head. It was shouting and moaning, and it dropped to the floor and lay motionless. And then another figure came rushing out of the house and disappeared into the darkness. The chap was so frightened that he ran off into the fields, thinking that this person may well chase him as well. He went through the middle of the fields and went round the village and came back, and without realising, came back in a circle and was at the start of the village again, at the same place. But the cottage was no longer there. The road was the same, the hedgerows were just the same as they'd been before, but no cottage. He was very worried, he was very concerned about it, and he continued along the road, walking in the middle of the road, hoping that a motorist would stop, and eventually a lorry driver did stop and pick him up and dropped him off in Retford. He went straight to bed. He was most concerned. He had a restless night. He eventually dropped off to sleep and was dreaming of murder, black deeds, and for some strange reason he could hear the creaking of a gibbet post and chains rattling in the breeze. When he eventually woke, he was most concerned, and he came here for some strange reason. He felt compelled to come here to the churchyard. He wandered round looking at the graves. Remember, this was 1952. And he eventually found a very old gravestone. And on that gravestone, he saw just a few words, still legible. And it said, William, son, Mary, 1790, murdered. He obviously wanted to go farther, and he went to the Nottinghamshire Records Office, and he found that on July the 3rd, 1790, William and Mary Yeadon had been battered to death with a hedge post by a man called John Spencer, who was robbing the house. Spencer was caught, taken to Nottingham and hanged on Gallows Hill. After he was hanged, his body was tarred. He'd been measured for his last suit in the jail, which of course was a gibbet cage. They hung him up 30 feet high in a gibbet cage and left him to rot with the crows pecking at his eyes. No one really knows what that gentleman saw in 1952. I think he must have seen of that horrendous murder that took place here in Scoby. I've had a little look round. I actually can't find a gravestone with the words on it that I mentioned earlier, but I can see one here, and I can just about make out the name William. I can't see murdered, I can't see a date, but I wonder if this is the grave of William and Mary Yeadon, who were battered to death here at Scoby in 1790. We'll probably never know. And here I am in the centre of historic Newark. Behind me, Newark Castle. It was here in 1219 that King John died. King John, the notorious king, arch enemy of no less than Robin Hood. They believe that King John was poisoned here. But I'm standing now outside one of the most haunted buildings in the centre of Newark. This was the Osington Coffee Palace, and the plaque says, a perfect copy of a 17th century hostelry erected in 1882 as a temperance hotel by Viscountess Osington, daughter of the 4th Duke of Portland and widow of the 1st Viscount Osington, one-time Speaker of the House of Commons. Viscountess Osington established this place as a temperance house, and there were no reports of ghosts or hauntings until after the 99-year lease was up. It was granted a license to sell liquor, and ever since that day many ghostly occurrences have taken place inside this building. Many members of the staff over years have been terrified by occurrences, especially upstairs where the restaurant was. Napkins have been thrown around and been seen floating around the room. Glasses blow up and glasses turn themselves over. One waitress went upstairs one day to find all the chairs moved out from around the table and placed in a circle round the room. People have been terrified in here at some of the occurrences, but I'm told by the present owners that it has now calmed down. The only thing that occasionally is heard is the rustle of a woman's dress and a strong smell of sandalwood, and it looks as if Viscountess Osington is still keeping an eye on the building just in case. And there's a gentleman actually literally just walked up to me while we stand here, and you know of ghostly occurrences that have taken place?
Yes.
What happened?
Well, last November my son was having his 21st birthday in the restaurant.
Here?
Oh yes, upstairs in the restaurant. We had the wine out, and all of a sudden the wine just seemed to slide across the dining table.
The glasses?
No, the wine bottles.
The bottles themselves?
Oh, yes, just moving plonked onto the floor. It was really quite
While you all the guests
there was
were
20 odd of us here.
and you all witnessed
We all
it?
witnessed it. We put it down to vibrations or what have you.
The tables weren't wet, of course, so that they could glide. No.
No, in fact, there were linen cloths, so there was no way they could have slid across the table unpolished or on a wet surface. There was linen tape.
Did they actually go off the table?
Actually, 3 of them went off, and my brother-in-law is a priest, and he died. He said, oh, well, if there is anyone here, she's not having the whiskey.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
But that did actually happen, just last November.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks very much indeed. Bye. Well, there you go. That's just how things happen when you're standing here. That gentleman literally just walked up to her. I don't know who he is, and he's gone. The last time I walked down the aisle at St Mary Magdalene in Newark, I was carrying the regimental colour of the 5th 8th Battalion, the Sherwood Foresters. We laid them up in here in 1979, and little did I know then that this church is haunted. During the war, people volunteered to be fire watchers at important buildings, to safeguard them from being burnt by incendiaries. 2 lads, choir boys, were in the vestry on fire watch. One of the lads went out to do his rounds and left the other lad inside the vestry with the door closed. While the boy was gone, there was very loud hammering and battering on this door. The lad inside was terrified. He stepped away from the door, and he could actually see the bottom of the door moving with whatever was trying to get in, kicking it and bashing it. Later on in the evening, his friend came back and couldn't understand why the lad looked so terrified. And he said what had happened, and his mate said, "You've been listening to too many ghost stories." The 2 lads settled down for the night, and it started again during the night. Banging and thumping on the door again. Neither of the boys dared to open the door to see what was behind it. The following morning, the verger came in to let them out and asked them why all the green baize had been ripped off this side of the door and strewn around this area of the church. He asked them what they'd been doing during the night. There were scratches and marks all over the bottom of the door. And to this day, nobody knows what happened that night during the Second World War. But there is another story over here of a priest seen kneeling and praying over here on the left-hand side. It's believed to be the ghost of the last Catholic priest here at St Mary Magdalene. He's seen kneeling, praying, and it's believed that moments later King Henry VIII's soldiers burst into the church, arrested him, took him away to York, where he was hanged, drawn and quartered for high treason. And over here, the Miserere chairs, 28 of them. There was an inventory done which stated 28 Miserere chairs with carvings, all like this one. The following year, a second inventory was done, only this time it stated 27 Miserere chairs and one without a carving, and for some strange reason unseen hands removed this carving from this chair. All the wood here in this chantry was granted under a charter of King Edward III. He allowed the cutting down of 12 oak trees from Sherwood Forest to build this wooden part of the church. And just before I leave, I shall just have a look over here at the colours of the 5th 8th Battalion Sherwood Foresters, laid up on the 22nd of April 1979. This one by me. And I'm now approaching the old coach archway to the White Hart Inn. This is reputedly the oldest inn in Newark. There's a plaque up there to prove it. And it has a ghost. A ghost called George. He's reputedly someone that was hanged outside in the marketplace and then brought back inside the pub to die. Now this is highly likely, although later, of course, Nottingham being the assize town, anybody to be hanged would be taken to Nottingham. But in the early days of rough justice, people would be hanged in lots of marketplaces around the county. The reason he would be taken in to die is because in those days they stood them on a cart or a wagon. The horse pulled away and the person died of slow strangulation, sometimes taking up to a quarter of an hour to die. And on many occasions people were actually only half hanged and taken down and died later. And that's probably why George still haunts the White Hart. But let's go in and have a look. And I'm actually inside the White Hart, and with me is Martin. And you haven't seen him, have you?
No,
but
I haven't seen him.
Things happen, yeah?
Yeah, little things like if there's no one in the building and like one of the staff's having arguments, coins have been thrown.
What, at you or at people?
the person who's having the argument, basically.
So he doesn't like
He don't.
unrest in the building, for instance?
No.
Right.
So, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, has anybody seen him?
Not that I know of. There's been little stories gone about, like you used to have a clock in the middle of the bar, the till's under it.
Yeah.
At night time, the clock's been lowered down.
Really? But moved by him or by
Just lowered
unseen
down
hands?
to the
Right.
to the till.
But no one's done that. None of the staff have done it. I
Oh no,
presume.
no. There's been like one bloke this end, one bloke that end, gone to the till, and it's come down onto the bar.
So he's a poltergeist by the sound of things, something that moves things around, and yeah.
He only comes, he only like does things when there's a bad atmosphere in the pub, basically.
Yeah. So he's probably a happy ghost that doesn't like unhappy times. But then again, when you think what probably happened to him
Oh yeah.
outside,
Yeah, I mean he got hung outside and dragged inside the building, left to die, basically.
yeah. Hence the fact his ghost still wanders, I presume.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as we know, we've had an Australian bloke coming here looking, like traced it back through
Really?
ancestors and come back looking.
Crikey. So he was probably transported out there as well, this bloke, or? Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much. That's super. Yeah. Thanks.
Cheers.
And I've just had an incredible homemade meringue inside the old bakery tea rooms. This place goes back to the 15th century, right in the centre of Newark, and it's got a ghost. I've just been talking to the present owner of the building, and she doesn't believe in ghosts, but she said strange things have happened to her. When she bought the building, she spent a lot of time early morning painting it and decorating it. And at 6 o'clock, she was painting away one morning, and she heard a little girl's voice calling her name. She came out from the kitchen to see who was there. There was no one there, the door was locked, there was no one outside. It happened to her again a week later. It was the same voice, the same happy little girl calling out to her. And then a few weeks later, her husband was in the building with her, and he suddenly shouted to her, "Yes, what's the matter? What do you want?" And she said, I haven't called you." He said, "Yes, you did. I've just heard your voice, but it sounded much younger." And he also heard the voice of the little girl that haunts the building. It's an extremely quaint little building in the centre of Newark, and it's so famous that it even appears on a Sharps toffee tin, and this was given to the present owner by the gentleman who brought it in. And there is this actual building here in Newark on a Sharps toffee tin. I'm here in the sleepy little village of East Stoke, 4 miles from Newark. East Stoke lying on the old Roman road, the Fossway, the place of death, destruction, battle and plague. In 1646, when the Great Plague was raging through England, 158 of the parishioners here died of the Black Death. And Arthur Mee, in his History of Nottinghamshire, stated that black crosses were spread all over the parish. But earlier than that, in 1487, a great battle took place here at East Stoke between the armies of King Henry VII and Lambert Simnel, the pretender to the earldom of Warwick. And here, to commemorate the dead at Stoke Field, June the 16th, 1487, John de la Pole, Earl of Lincoln, Sir Thomas Geraldine, Colonel Martin Schwartz, and 7,000 others, English, Irish and German. So many people were killed here that there are many reports of ghosts, especially naked men, because a lot of the Irish fought naked with swords and daggers, and this is why so many reports have been seen, especially on the road to Fiskerton Ferry, which is known as the Red Gutter. because the blood flowed so much down that road. I've come to look for the weeping angel of East Stoke, and here she is. This is actually a memorial to Julian, Baron Pauncefort, first ambassador to the United States of America. And legend has it that this angel weeps real tears to the dead of East Stoke. Now, on many of these videos I've talked about how can you see a ghost with clothes on, because you see a lot of what I believe we see is nothing more than a recording, hence the fact you see them clothed. You see a coach and four, a man with a sword and a hat or armour, but here at East Stoke we've got what I believe to be the real ghosts, because these soldiers that are seen are actually naked. But while we were in the pub earlier in Newark, we were talking to one of the barmen, and he said that one evening with his girlfriend driving along here, as he got to the bridge, the car cut out just before they went under it, and a white lady walked across the bridge and disappeared down this driveway. And when she'd vanished, he tried the car and it started up again. But he said it frightened him so much that he actually wouldn't be filmed. But he told me where to come, and he said, "You do it, but I'm not going back there." Hello, my name's Richard Felix, and I'm here at my base at the Old County Jail in the centre of Derby. This place over the last 150 years has been a place of terror, torment, and of course death. And that's one of the reasons why this place is as haunted as it is. I've chosen Derby as the catalyst for the national ghost tour of Great Britain. Over the last 10 years, I have taken in excess of 95,000 people on a ghost tour somewhere around the Midlands. And of course, have spoken to many of those people on the tours, and of course have realised just how fascinated people are by ghosts. This is the reason that we have chosen to do this tour. The video that you've just watched is a part of that series, but I want your help. If you have a ghost story, then please either email me or write to me at the address that you'll see at the end of this video. Of course, you must remember that after speaking to so many people, I think I have an ability to be able to see through some of the stories, to be able to differentiate between a story that is true or a story that's made up. And of course, you must remember that 8 out of 10 ghost stories can be explained, but it's the other 2 that you've got to worry about. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Do sleep well and don't have nightmares.